Hello. Hello
Hi.
again. It's so good to see you. Um,
Likewise.
we're here in conversation talking about life, values, social media, and fashion. To give a little introduction to myself, my name is Taylor Cassidy. I'm a TikTok creator and I create content on Black culture. I do positivity, fashion, just anything that brings good energy. Can you give us a little introduction to yourself?
I love that. I mean, you kind of described me.
Oh my
I'm
God.
June Ambrose. I'm new to the PUMA family. I'm a creative director, and I'm really excited after having a over 25-year career in music and fashion, and as an author and a personality, TV personality. I'm really excited to be joining the family to work in this creative capacity. So, and really excited to talk to you because I just think, your generation is generation now, not next. And it's really exciting because we used to hear that a couple of years ago. You hear, oh, your generation next. And it's like, Taylor, it's now, it's happening, right? Like
Yeah.
now is all of our time, but specifically generation now. Yeah.
That is so true. It's crazy because we're like on the same wavelength of creativity. It's awesome. But I
Me
know
too.
that in your career you have made so many iconic looks and it just makes me wonder, was there ever like a time where you said, "You know what? I need to stay true to myself and I need to just bring it all or nothing." Like how did those values play into you creating like your signature look?
That's a really good question. And I think when we talk about values, and creativity, it's so important because your creativity is really a part of yourself. It's really who you are. And then you share that creativity with the world. And it's not just the person that you're collaborating in front of you. It's knowing that it's going to really affect and touch so many different lives. So going into it that way, I always want to convey things that are authentic, things that, that translate far beyond, one dimension. I always try to see every side of a situation. When I'm designing, I look at every aspect of it. Creativity is not small. It's not a small molecule. It's a big atom. And I say I'm June to the fifth power because I'm always looking for different formulas and different ways to create storytelling and magical moments in everything I do. Working with PUMA as I'm developing a collection, I'm thinking about fit factor. I'm thinking about wow factor. I'm thinking about style factor. I'm thinking about hanger appeal. I'm thinking about like how fashion is mute without style. And what is style, right? It's our voices. It's like, it's the translation. It's how we speak before we even open our mouths. Like I'm looking at you and I look at your style and I immediately know she's a creative. Right? How many times do you walk down the street and people are like, I can tell you're creative. You just have that thing, right? Because creatives are very expressive. But I think there's a creative, like there is a superstar in every person. It's just a matter of trusting yourself, homing into that, developing that. And creativity, again, it can start off really small and blossom into something very big. And I'm sure you've learned that in building your career and persona in the digital space.
You're so right. I love what you just said about creativity isn't small because it makes me
Yeah.
think of there's a Maya Angelou quote. It goes something along the lines of the more you use creativity, the more you make. And that's so true because, something that I've always
Yeah.
wanted to like work on is saying yes to ideas. And I found that like if I let doubts try and refine the idea, I was really restricting my creativity. And I put that into play a lot in my content and like saying yes to this joke I wanted to make or saying yes to this visual I wanted to experiment with. And it's all about saying yes to showing your full self. And a lot of times it's kind of hard to do.
Scary.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me to see you create such an amazing career. It really is amazing. I did my homework. It is
Oh, thank
amazing.
you.
And something that I always wonder about is, in my future, you said we're generation now. And I know that still I have a lot more to go. I'm still at the beginning. And it makes me wonder, were there any points in your career where you felt like you were limited, or you felt like some entity was trying to restrict your ideas? And how did you, stand for your values?
Well, listen, you are always going to meet obstacles along this journey. It's kind of what shapes us, how we resolve conflict, how we navigate around one door being closed and building our own. These are just natural courses in life. And yeah, of course, I've been in situations where people have tried to put me in a box and said, oh, she's this kind of creative. This is what she's known for this. So that's all of who she is. And not allowing someone to have that much power over you, and not allowing, that person to define you from what their expectations are, but knowing, having a very clear sense of self really helps you. It takes away a little bit of the sting. And I just remember what I was going to say earlier. Comparison is probably the biggest joy killer that there is. And I know it's really hard because we have so many resources to compare ourselves to others. And it is the hardest thing to navigate through all of the noise, is looking at something and thinking either, why can't I have that? Or why didn't I think of that? Or I should have done it this way. And you're comparing. And, it's super important that you don't let that take your joy and distract you from the process. So I think it kind of falls really right back into, obstacles that I may have had. Because, you look at me, you think, this young brown girl in fashion, she must only speak to this. But constantly knowing that you control the narrative, that you have the power to change that narrative, is probably the most liberating experience of any human. Whether you're Black, white, Hispanic, whatever it is that you are, is really understanding the power of your words and your thoughts and putting those to task before you put someone else's words and power to task. Own your own, master how you use those things and grow, and also help others to grow, because we're not in this world by ourselves. And it's really about how we interact with people in this lifetime will be our legacy. It is part of our legacy. It's not just the tangible things we do, but it's how we made someone feel. That is legacy, building, that someone will one day say, I remember when, or she was, that's a legacy. That your essence, that who you were was so potent, so powerful that it changed, it mattered to someone.
Yeah, that is so, so powerful. Something you said, whenever you said comparison, it reminded me of something that I've personally been saying to myself over and over again, is don't ask permission. Mm-hmm. And it's like this thing of, if I want to, do an adulting thing and go on a trip somewhere or go grocery shopping or something like that, it's don't ask permission. You have the power to go and take that step if you're ready for it. And it makes me think about comparison whenever you want to, let's say you want to look cool, you want a cool outfit, and you go online and you start comparing your style. And you do try and go get dressed up. You're like, okay, let me go check online and see if my style matches, right? And I found that in doing so, I'm still asking permission. Yeah, and not allowed to.
Exactly, because you're looking for validation.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so
you're describing adulting though. Sometimes I'm like, oh, being an adult is such a drag because you have to make these decisions sometimes on your own, right? And sometimes, listen, if we're being totally honest with each other, that is part of the process now. Mm-hmm. Even though we can have ownership in our decision making, it's still part of the process to kind of peek and see what others are doing and crowdsourcing. And, I am guilty of that too. So I'm not going to paint this picture of this, this perfect world. We are imperfect human beings living in an imperfect world. And it's natural for us to have the inquisitiveness to know, especially now that we have access to know. What I'm saying is, don't allow it to cripple you. Don't allow it to have so much power over you that you lose course in what your voice and your messaging is. That's all I'm saying. But I am guilty of crowdsourcing, seeing what's going on, especially because we've been locked away for a year. All we had visually in terms of communication, we were physically distanced, but we weren't socially distanced. Right? We were very connected more so than ever virtually. I mean, people watching this will be immersed into the universe, in your universe. You know, we are bringing our universe, we're colliding right now, and we're communicating in this space. And hopefully people, it's a space that people want to spend time in. You know, I want people, you know, all we had was the energy. Do I want, you know, right? It was like energy. Did I, you know, did I want to go onto your, you know, your TikTok? Did I want to go on and feed off of your energy and your authenticity? You're so authentic. That's why people showed up. But that's why they showed up, because they weren't meeting you in person. It was, you were resonating authentically. And that's what people saw. There's power in that.
Right. It's that energy that, like you said, attracts people because it shows them, maybe I can have that energy. Maybe I can influence those people. Maybe I can go create my own magic. And I wanted to kind of shift the conversation and bring it to something that I personally think connects our two industries, fashion and social media. And it's something that I see a lot. It's like a lot of cultural appropriation. I see it in fashion. I see it online on social media. My stuff has gotten culturally appropriated. And it's that feeling of putting so much hard work into something and so much love into it, and then seeing it get taken by somebody else without credit, and then either getting a lot of praise for it or just no credit at all for you. And I just wanted to ask, you know, have you seen that with your own work, or have you encountered that?
I mean, you know, when you're uniquely doing something that is of substance and you're contributing that, you are at risk of, you know, I too have been, you know, a victim of that, but not to the place where I allow it to take away my joy in my contribution. You have to have, at some point, you just have to be able to just kind of close your eyes and know that this is something that you contributed, that you're responsible for, and that piece of the puzzle is going to emancipate in something that will come back to you. It all comes back to you. So I always tell, you know, young creators that feel like, oh, someone took this from me. You know, at the end of the day, you know, fashion is it goes in cycles. And we're not inventing anything, you know, and some of your ideas that you have come up with, believe it or not, they were born somewhere else, maybe many, many moons and centuries ago. Knowing that our ideas, even though we've taken ownership of them, when we share them, we do it so that they can be kind of almost taken in a sense, celebrated. I do think it comes back if you stay on course, if you continue to rise up and continue to claim it in a way that's so like iconically consistent. Don't let someone taking something that you created away from you and back down. Stick to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you know that you're the author of this phrase, just because such and such is saying it over and over and over again, and people are recognizing them, trust me, it will come back to you, and people will do their due diligence. Because I've been in a place where people come back and say, you know what, I just, like you said, I did my research. There'll be kids researching you many years from now and say, this is where it started. I'm still to this day in my life discovering designers that never got credit for certain things. And there are people, there are individuals that are saying, is literally taking their work out of capsules and bringing them back and coming with the receipts and saying, this is where this came from. You have people like Diet Prada, and you have like all these kind of like journalistic, fashion journalistic and journalists who are looking for receipts, and they're literally giving back that creativity to the originators. So it's not your job, you know, don't bear that cross. Like, don't feel like you have to carry that, because just continue to speak it. You know, I don't know if I'm making sense, because I kind of, I kind of took it many places, and I like to approach things from a very holistic place for my sanity.
It's that consistency, I think, that I love is that consistency to keep on going. And even if somebody tries to either invalidate, take your work or whatever, you say, oh, thank you for the flattery. Let's keep going. You know, it's amazing, because I recently received a comment on one of my videos, and it said, I admire your consistency. And I think that's one of the best comments I could have ever received, because
of course,
over everything.
But let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Why do you create the content that you create?
Because I love it. I love telling those stories. I love sharing.
And what do you think it's going to do on the other side of that storytelling? Change lives, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And people will emulate. You will start to see people who may want to dress like you, that starts to speak like you, that's taking your vernacular and hearing their voices in your words. That is the best form of flattery, because you recognize that your journey, that's part of your journey. That's part of why you were put into this position, so that you can lead, that movement.
Yeah.
So don't let that break your heart, that you may see other people being celebrated for something you created. Continue to create those moments. It's like building that ark.
Yeah.
Because they all come on board, and at the end of the day, no one could ever be you. I always say you're the closer. The way you deliver it is so different. The genuine authenticity in authors of things, it always resonates different. People would look at some of my work and say, "Oh, I could tell that's June Ambrose. I could tell that's June Ambrose's work."
That's the goal. Yeah.
Just stick to it. Yeah, stick to it. And listen, every day you won't be celebrated and validated, but it can't be why you do what you do. And you have to wake up knowing, I do what I'm doing because look at all the young people that it inspired. Look at all the young people that I have literally organized and encouraged and activated to be, the voices of the generation. And because they see my courage, they know that they now can be just as fearless.
And for you, who were those people for you that you looked up to and you were like, I'm going to be like them, or they are who laid the path for you?
I wanted to be like my mother. I mean, I look at my, 16-year-old and I want her to want to be like me, not, anyone on the outside that we're visually just looking at it and I want her to have context of what I was made up of, what my intentions are. I had very clear understanding of who my mother was and how she evolved and what she put first and why, and understanding her course of action in raising me. And I found that to be so inspiring. And it literally was the ground and the walls. It was the ground that I walked on, the walls that I leaned on. And, I want that to be for my daughter, what she looks to, that she sees that I'm the tenaciousness, the relentlessness, that she knows that it's okay to feel and hurt and be disappointed, but also be victorious and rise from those ashes like a falcon. I want her to see that.
I feel the exact same way. My mom, there's two things that she says all the time. One of them is, it is what it is. And then I got her like a fact.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Mm-hmm.
It is what it
all
is.
The time.
Yeah.
All the time. And
that's such a great line.
It's the connection. What can I say?
It's what it is. Yeah. That's oh my God. I got goosebumps. That's great.
Something else she says, your talent will make room for you. And I've heard that phrase since childhood. And what she means by
that's strong.
Right? And I didn't really understand the power of that, the meaning that as long as you are dedicated to your passion and you keep working on it, that consistency again, your talent will make room for you and where you are.
That made me emotional. I gotta tell you, that's like, woo, that is so powerful.
I'm trying to hold on to that because it tells you that, like, no matter what your dream is, no matter how big it is, It's never big enough. You can get there.
Never big enough.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to meet her. That was like so much.
I'm sure she would love you.
She's my hero. That was great. Good job, Mom. Yeah. Bingo on that one.
What was, tell me, I want to know, what was like your big dream before you achieved? Like whenever you got to like this big goal or this big dream that you thought would never happen, or you thought it might be a long time, and then you were there and you were like in awe. What was that? What was one of those kind of dreams for you?
You know what's interesting? I didn't dream about wealth. I didn't dream about like position. My dream was that I used to get really emotional by things that felt sad. And I know it's an unrealistic. They say I have like a Peter Pan syndrome. I love the feeling, the endorphinness of happiness. It is such a beautiful endorphin to be happy. And I would dream of never losing that feeling. And even in the most painful and hurtful and grief-stricken moments, I would sense memory. If you can tap back into joy and happiness, it really does heal the wounds. It closes that brokenness. And I dreamed about never not being happy, and what brings me joy. And then once I realized what made me happy, and I realized that it wasn't anything, anyone or anything, that it was inside of me, then I was able to sprinkle that and share that. And that was like the dreams coming true, like the interaction, the meeting, the being able to work with people that may not have been like-minded, but maybe make them happy in the moment that they weren't, or maybe change, the way they perceived life. This life that we have is not as long as we think. Right. Some of us get to live a full life cycle, 100 years, whatever it is, and some of us don't. But just knowing, I dreamed that I would make an impact on this, while I'm here, that will live so far past me. And what would that look like? How do I make that impact? Is it with my talent, my work? Was it with something I said? What is it that I would leave behind? And when we look at everything tangible, at the end of the day, you can leave your spirit behind. I dreamed of that.
I love that so much. You can leave your spirit behind.
Yeah.
I'm going to go think about that after this. It's so beautiful. Right? Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
But it's true. And I think what the quarantine did was give us time to be still. Mm-hmm. and really take an inventory, really reset, understand what path we're on, and plan of action for moving forward.
Yeah.
That being still, that stillness was such a beautiful gift. And, I know that people can't find the silver lining because there was so much loss during that time. But it's like, how do we come out of this with a tenaciousness and an excitement and enthusiasm? To live is to take record of how far we've come. And what are we going to do now? What's next? And I'm really excited about the journey that I'm on with PUMA. I'm really excited to be part of campaigns like She Moves Us that are championing for young women, for philanthropic, conversations that really help to embrace and encourage girls to come together and support one another in a way that's so global that it's colorless. I dreamed of a day that wouldn't matter the color of my skin, but the content of who I was all that someone saw. Those are the dreams. And I know we've heard this dream before said by a very famous preacher. But it's the dream that we, especially of, young brown girls and, Black women growing up into this life, we want to feel like we are part of it, not trying to fit in, but just naturally part of the fabric of this country, of this world. Why should we feel like we are a patch or we're something that has to be fixed? It's like, I want to exist in a way that everyone else who's, that's come into the world with privilege exists. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what I dream of.
It's that fluidity. It's that it's the normalization. You know, a lot of times I see like Black people being treated as like a check mark or a check box or that patch that you just talked about. And it's that desire to have like Black creators, Black designers, Black creatives of all kinds, have them have a normalcy of them being included and not a reparation or not a just like a checkbox. Like it's normal to include this diverse group of whatever in whatever project. And the way you described the joy and the happiness of your dream, it's amazing because I think about a lot the difference between just being happy and being joyful. And my difference is, you know, you can feel happy for a moment, but that joy is what keeps you grounded, even in those darkest places. That joy is what keeps that life for you when you're ready to go back to it. So I know that over quarantine, I picked up about 22 different things that I thought I would never be able to do. Is there anything that you picked up during quarantine or that you started doing that were just like completely new to you?
Oh my God, meditation. I can't be still. I am naturally very hyperactive and I have the attention span of a gerbil. So I learned to be still. Another thing that we did that was really great, you know, we created content and we had, you know, we had a formatted daily show that my daughter and I did, the June and summer show, because we just feel like, you know, like it was our season to kind of, you know, entertain each other and our friends. Because again, we were separated physically, but not, you know, virtually.
Yeah.
And we wanted to bring other voices to the table and start to really kind of share information with the audience. And we thought that was really, and also keep the narrative broad so that, you know, it allowed us not to be put into a box. Whereas like, even though my daughter isn't, you know, a very talented chef, but she has interest in other areas and it allowed her to really be seen in different spaces. It allowed me to be seen as more than just someone who speaks to fashion and style, that I was addressing a number of issues that I felt were important to me as a person.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like, I learned to be still. And I also learned to, you know, that routine is super, super important. And a lot of us didn't realize we had a routine until it was taken away from us.
Yeah.
We didn't realize that getting up, showering, putting on clothes and getting to somewhere was part of the routine, even if you worked at home. But at some point during quarantine, I think we were all so in shock of what was happening to us. Someone telling us we can't leave our home was so mind blowing that, you know, we
kind of like shut down.
I turned to the routine immediately. Yeah. I was like, I need to get into a routine. And that routine really kind of saved us, to be honest.
Yeah, I totally feel you. Whenever quarantine,
it normalized what we were doing, what we were experiencing. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of, for me, I like shut down for a week. And then by the next week, I was like, okay, it's time to get my affairs in order. But something you said it allowed you to have like a broader voice. And it makes me think, what are your thoughts on fashion and what it means either politically, socially, or making a message with your voice outside of just, oh, this is cute to wear? Like what in fashion makes that message important?
That's interesting. I mean, like, you know, I think, well, fashion is mute without style. I think that style is a language, and how you articulate that is somewhat of the calling card. It's a springboard. It's how you strike the conversation that's broader than the impression that's first made, right? I think, and then there's also ways of, you know, using, you know, fashion with phrases. And you all know that there was a big movement in how T-shirts became billboards, and we wore, especially when we were marching in the streets, and, you know, there were pink pussycat hats, and, you know, 4 years ago, and there was all these things that we felt were our fashionably correct and our voices to promote action. And I think that fashion can play a big part in activating and promoting and articulating messages. Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of that. But style is how you deliver it. It's the style in which we talk about racial inequities, we talk about women inequalities. It's the style in which we deliver that, makes it less of an uncomfortable conversation, but more of a necessary conversation. I'm really tired of people saying, oh, well, it's an uncomfortable conversation. But at what point is it going to be a necessary conversation? Let's take out the uncomfortableness, because everything in life, that's new and that is, that has a little fervor in it, it's going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If it's wrapped in, if there's, especially you're talking about atrocities that have been committed, that is very uncomfortable. Yeah. But I think that you see a lot of brands that it's very important. And if the messaging is not in the clothes, it's in the campaigns, it's in the caption,
Yeah. And I think that with brands using, their platform to speak up on those issues, it helps people to realize who they're supporting and what voice is behind that brand. Like, do you support who I am? Do you support this lifestyle? Do you support the way I view human rights? And that's something that I think is really important. And
consumers they're much more smarter and more clear now. They want to know that this person's not trafficking, that this person doesn't have a sweatshop, that this person has this company has diversity, that this company recognizes that this is important to the fabric and the culture of this world, and I'm speaking globally. And that matters to consumers even more so now than ever, because at the height of the Black Lives Matters movement, we saw that people globally, if they knew this was happening, they would care, and how they responded is what we saw.
Right.
You can't respond to something that is never addressed. And I was astonished by the amount of the global. Do you remember were you like,
yes,
when you saw all the different countries that were participating?
Yes.
That cared because they learned, they knew. So when you talk about like movies that are made to talk about these atrocities, it's like, how many more of these movies can we see until the right people start watching them?
Yeah.
That's why. Till the right people start reading those books. That's when they stop getting done.
It's whenever those like things that are used to push these social problems and issues into awareness aren't marketed only to the people who are affected, but it's marketed to everybody. Everybody begins to take notice and move and make that impact. That moves.
I love that. She moves us. Yes.
She moves us. Exactly.
Yeah. Like, we get what that means, right? Like, the fact that a woman has the power to say something and do something that can move and shift, culture and people's thoughts and mindsets is a great badge of honor to carry.
It sure is. And you definitely move all of us. You've moved me in this conversation. I love it.
Thank you. It's so good talking to you, Taylor.
It was so great talking to you. Keep moving. I'm going to keep rising as I have on my wall. We're going to keep being creative on the same wavelength.
That's right.
It is what it is.
We're going to keep it wavy.
Exactly.